Brad, you ready? All right.
Yes.
Do you want a flag?
I've got one. More flags
Oh, you
about
have one.
And Tim brought a very big one if he turned off his background.
Yeah, but your flag disappears, Tim.
Oh,
It's invisible.
we'll use keys.
All right.
Yeah.
So I call to order our regular city council meeting for Tuesday, November 17th, 2020. For those joining us live, apologize for the delay. Our joint work session ran late. And thought we'd best to get it all done since we had so many guests joining us. Would everyone please join for the Pledge of Allegiance? Leaving my mic on. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States
of America,
and to the republic
for
which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
for all.
with liberty and justice for all.
Great job. Roll call, Sylvia.
Mayor Mays.
Here.
Council President Rosner.
Here.
Councilor Browse.
Here.
Councilor Griffin.
Here.
Councilor Garland.
Here.
Councilor Young.
Here.
And Councilor Scott.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. We have approval of the agenda.
I make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you, Council. We have a consent agenda this evening that's 9 or 10 items long. Item A is approval of the October 6th, 2020 City Council meeting minutes. Item B is approval of the October 20th, 2020 City Council meeting minutes. Item C is Resolution 2020-077, appointing Danny Sticka to the Sherwood Library Advisory Board. Item D is Resolution 2020-078, appointing Jane Van Kuren to the Sherwood Library Advisory Board. Item E is Resolution 2020-079, appointing Vishwas Sethi to the Sherwood Library Advisory Board. Item F is Resolution 2020-080, appointing Elizabeth Fritz Kalsvetsky to the Sherwood Library Advisory Board. Item G is Resolution 2020-081, appointing Lily Fairman to the Sherwood Library Advisory Board. Item H, there's two left, is Resolution 2020-082, appointing John Velez to the Comprehensive Planning Community Advisory Committee. And item I is Resolution 2020-083, authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services contract with Magellan Advisors to provide design services for the fiber to the home project.
Second.
Renee makes a motion. Who made the second? Tim made the second. Comment on the motion. All in favor of the consent agenda as presented, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Council. Citizen comment. Sylvia, do we have any citizen comments?
No, Mayor and Council, we do not have citizen comments this evening.
Thank you, Sylvia. Presentations. Recognition of Eagle Scout Award recipients.
Yes, Mayor, we had two Eagle Scouts that we invited, and we had some additional ones that we were noticed. If Council still approves, I'd like to carry these over to the next meeting so we can recognize all of them.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Sylvia. We will do that. Item 8 on the agenda is new business. Resolution 2020-084, opposing the proposed tipping fee increase by Metro. Joe? You're muted, Joe. Joe is new to computers. It's okay.
Sorry.
Gray hair.
Microphone. Sorry, Mr. Mayor and Council. Good evening. I will briefly introduce this, but as you received in the staff report, I'm recommending tabling this, and I'll explain to the council and to the public. But in brief, there is a current proposal by Metro to raise tipping fees in the region. A fairly significant increase, 9% is being proposed. The current proposal would go into effect January 4th, 2021. The city of Sherwood, both elected and appointed officials, along with other cities in the region and haulers in the region, have raised a lot of significant questions about the timing and the size of this increase. So Metro has slowed the process down slightly. They're delaying action on this until later in December. More importantly, they are willing to come to a special meeting with this council next Tuesday night to get into the details in terms of the questions you have asked me in terms of why is this necessary, why is the tipping fee increase so significant, is this the right time to be raising fees in the middle of a pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. So I drafted this resolution for consideration tonight, but I'm also recommending that you table it and allow Metro to answer our questions next week and let the process proceed, and then revisit this at your next meeting on December 1st.
Thanks, Joe. I think that's a great idea. I was happy to see that they're willing to come and visit with council on this topic to explain their proposal, defend it. And for those watching, Joe, what's a tipping fee?
So tipping fees are a variety of fees that get charged basically when your garbage gets taken to a transfer station and gets tipped, I believe. That's where it comes from in terms of the jargon. There's a per ton cost, and that's broken into a variety of different types of charges for Metro, basically. But it's basically money that goes back to Metro for the regional solid waste system. But it ultimately gets passed on to consumers, residents, businesses in their rates.
Very good. So it's a Metro fee. Yeah.
It usually goes up once a year, July 1st. They did not do a July 1st, 2020 increase. They delayed it because of COVID. And now they're proposing this one, but more importantly, they're also proposing another one, July 1st of 2021, which could also be significant. So there's just a lot of concern about this, the size and the timing of these increases and the reasons behind it.
And for just more clarity for our constituents out there, if those tipping fees go up, that directly impacts individual garbage rates that
Correct.
you pay every month, and that's why we're so concerned about it.
Correct.
So unless there's an objection, I think it is good to continue this to the first meeting in December. And between now and then, we will learn more about Metro's plans, and we can ask them questions about it. Hearing no objection, that is what we will do. Moving on to public hearings, we have 3 public hearings this evening. Sylvia, do you want to let us know what they are?
Yes, Mayor and Council, so I have 3 items, and the script is going to be a little bit different because we have first readings and second readings on these ordinances. So
you want to read your part just on for one at a time after we do each one, or do you want to read your spiel all at once?
I think I figured it out all at once.
Okay, no problem.
So the Sherwood City Council will hold a public hearing this evening to hear testimony on 3 items on the agenda. Ordinance 2020-005, amending sections of the Sherwood Zoning and Community Development Code as it relates to the regulations of signs. This is the second reading on this ordinance. Item B on the agenda is Ordinance 2020-008, approving annexation of 10.90 acres to the City of Sherwood and 10.50 acres to Clean Water Services within the Tonquin Employment Area, comprised of 1 tap slot and the adjacent Southwest Oregon Street and Southwest Tonquin Road right-of-way. This is the first reading on this ordinance. Ordinance 2020-010, adopting the 2019 through 2039 Sherwood Housing Needs Analysis as a sub-element of the comprehensive plan. This is the first reading on this ordinance. The following process will apply to all ordinances. Staff will present staff reports, questions, if any, by the City Council for staff. Council will consider written testimony, and I'll present those in just one moment. We will then open the public hearing to consider that testimony. The public hearing will then be closed. No other comments will be received. Final comments by staff, questions of staff, if any, by the council, followed by discussion for the council. For the ordinance number 005 on the second reading, the City Council may make a decision at the close of this hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a time and date certain, this is the only notice of that date you will receive. Again, this is for ordinance 005. For ordinance 008 and 010, this is the first reading on both these ordinances. Council will generally hold 2 hearings prior to making a decision. A second hearing on these items is currently scheduled for December the 1st. However, in accordance with the city charter, council reserves the right to make a decision at the close of this hearing by a unanimous vote of all sitting council members. I believe that concludes the statement. As far as the items that were submitted, Mayor and Council, Council received these via email. For ordinance 005, there was a written testimony received from Corey Kearsley with the Sherwood Chamber of Commerce. There was written testimony received from Daryl Winnard with the Portland Metropolitan Association of Realtors. Again, that was for ordinance 005. For ordinance 010, there was a letter received from Al Jeck with Venture Properties on behalf of Kelly Ritz, the president of Venture Properties. And there was written testimony received from Jack Kearney with U Realty. Again, all these items will be entered into the council record. And that concludes my statement.
Thank you, Sylvia. Erica, you're on deck.
Great. Can everyone see this presentation and hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. So good evening, Mayor and Council. So on June 2nd of this year, Council held the first reading of this ordinance pertaining to sign code amendments. Council at that time decided to continue to a date certain, today, November 17th, because there is some uncertainty about, the COVID-19 pandemic and how long the pandemic would last. Obviously, we're still in the pandemic. But I have a short presentation tonight presenting a few options about how to move forward. So we updated the development code to specifically address feather signs. The development code doesn't clearly distinguish between a flag and what is typically considered a feather sign or a flag sign. The proposed amendments included some new definitions for a feather sign and new standards based on the number of signs allowed on a parcel, height, and location. And we added some additional language from the June 2nd meeting in regards to the time limit or fixed duration that someone could have a feather sign permit. And right now the way it reads is only one permit per property will be granted per calendar year for a 90-day consecutive day, 90 calendar day period. The approval process is also an administrative type 1 application. So we also did make a change to the signs in the institutional and public zone areas, and basically this change had to do with wall signs, and we made the language a little bit flexible in that if a building is located at least 100 feet away from a collector or an arterial roadway, they are permitted a wall sign up to a maximum of 150 square feet, and the sign may not be larger than 20% of the wall on which it is located. So those are the major changes in this ordinance. Some of the public engagement and noticing activities that we've done. Planning Commission, they held a work session last fall in regards to these amendments. A project page was created in early February and is still up online. We sent out notice to the Sherwood Chamber of Commerce, and then we went through all the required public noticing requirements. 2 comments have been received from Daryl Winard from the Metropolitan Association of Realtors, and they are proposing that the city retain the current language in our code that allows the use of temporary portable signs within the public way without seeking authorization from homeowners within the residential zone. And then we also received a comment from the Sherwood Chamber of Commerce, and they are requesting for council to continue this hearing matter until 2021 due to COVID-19 and to reassess the situation next summer. So just a little bit about future enforcement here. We know this is likely to get some pushback from business owners, but we're really going to focus on education and compliance with an educational campaign. And we're going to continue to be really proactive about this matter and to make sure that unpermitted feather signs don't start popping up everywhere. So due to the global pandemic and its impact on local businesses, staff has developed the following options for council to consider. First, you can conduct the second reading as presented. If adopted, the ordinance would take effect after 30 days. You can conduct the second reading and amend the ordinance to provide for a later effective date. This would allow staff to provide some additional outreach materials to businesses, about the new standards. Or you can continue this hearing to a date certain to allow the city to assess the pandemic at a later time frame. And this would allow for additional public input, and council could provide additional direction to staff regarding potential changes prior to a new hearing or a continued hearing date on this matter. So with that, I can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Erica. Josh and Joe, if council wanted to act today on this in one form or another, we are still in a state of emergency. These things are into the purview of code enforcement and the city manager, and you've suspended many of these things during the pandemic state of emergency. I'm assuming that that would continue to be the tool of the city manager.
So Josh, let me answer first, and you can give your legal response, and correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, I believe, based on my knowledge of the emergency ordinance and the responsibilities in a pandemic like now, that I would have the ability to suspend enforcement on things that would be damaging to businesses who are trying to survive during the pandemic. Josh, am I correct in that assumption? Okay.
So two things on this. One, even outside of a pandemic, the city manager has inherent authority to prioritize enforcement and staff resource allocation, that sort of thing. Doubly so, of course, during a pandemic, certainly for the reasons Joe just identified as far as impacts on businesses and financial loss, but also, of course, there's impacts on staff safety and staff health with sending people out into the field to try to enforce certain ordinances and prioritizing those. So that would continue.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Joe. Certainly on the request from the realtors, was that correct? That they want to be able to do it before, or just something more? I don't have the thing in front of me. They wanted to best efforts to contact the property owner, but in the event they were not successful, they could still.
Yes, that is the current code language, allows for placement in the, we're talking about in the right of way in front of a residential property, abutting a residential property. The current code language allows for placement of the sign there after good faith effort to contact the homeowner, but not necessarily getting the permission of the homeowner. The proposed language requires the actual permission of the homeowner in order to be able to place the sign there. And that was based on, if I recall correctly, this was some time ago, but that was based on feedback that we've received from homeowners who weren't happy about signs being placed in the right of way in front of their home without their permission.
So, Mayor,
So Renee's hand is up.
I have a comment and then a question. My comment is, it really seems like there's a lot of concentration on the feather sign as the emphasis for this particular code. I like the fact that the feather signs have been defined. I think that's great. So this leads to my question. Is it an opportunity for us to go ahead and change the code to allow for the definition of the feather sign and then the changes to the signs on the building, but not define necessarily what or the permitting process for the sign itself, and allow us to get past the pandemic and get businesses back to normal, but we still have a sign code that reflects the feather sign? Hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you, Renee. I think it would require, noticing twice type of stuff, so it might take more steps. There's pros and cons. If we were to act today and make an effective date in 6 months or something like that, with the city manager's certain authority to alter it or pick when to enforce it, it would provide notice to businesses that the rules are changing and not to buy new ones in the feather sign bucket. The other thing is we could just extend it, extend this to another meeting to discuss it further. And the one argument to extend is Russell had to leave, so he can't contribute to the conversation today. To let people know, and I don't know all the details as to why he had to drop off, but it wasn't planned. Sean, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so I just wanted to, kind of reiterate what I had said in a previous meeting, really echoing what Corey from the chamber has said, as I'm, a little bit more inclined to push this out a little bit, given the uncertainty of the pandemic. I think even the last time we talked, we were certainly more optimistic about the end of the pandemic than I am, at least at this point now. And one of the other things that I think did come up here recently that we haven't specifically addressed within this review of the sign ordinance, but did come up during the campaign season, is there was some concern specifically from one resident that we got an email on, but I heard some other concerns from others as well about this. It's just part of the language that talks about the number of signs that are allowed in a residential property, and then moving on, the next portion of that same ordinance talks about the number of signs that are allowed in businesses, where the ruling or the ordinance is one sign, portable sign per business. And I think we saw that wasn't necessarily the case in our last campaign season here as well. So I don't know if that's something that, giving this a little bit more time to push this out, gives us time to review that section of the sign code as well, if there's interest in doing so.
Thank you, Sean. Doug, your hand is up.
I mean, both Kim and Tim were ahead of me, but I'll jump in anyway since you called on me. I'll just, two things. In regards to the change requested by the realtors, I'm actually in favor of the new language as is. I think, I don't think someone should put a sign in front of my house without my permission. So that's just me. And then secondarily, just on a wider scope, I certainly am in favor of pushing this out. As you know, I'm not in favor of these changes as they're written and won't be voting for it anyway. But the longer we push it out, then the more time I guess I can have to change minds.
Okay. Kim?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. For some reason, mine says I'm on Do Not Disturb, and I don't understand what that means. But I had a concern with the language. It's probably opposite of what Doug just said, and it's what you talked about, Mayor, that section about the realtor's concerns. And now they'll say signs are not permitted in the right-of-way adjacent to residential zones without authorization of the adjoining property owner. And I just see realtors put their A-frames up on the corners, which a lot of time is by a residence. And I just don't really see the harm in that. They're up for, their open houses for 3 or 4 hours, and to require them to go knock on, to get specific permission, I think is daunting and not necessary. I see Doug's point. If we were putting like campaign sign type things in the right of way in front of somebody's houses, but we're usually talking A-frames. I guess they do put those directional signs though that are on stakes out as well. So I just don't. Yeah.
So that's a interesting. That's a very interesting distinction, Kim, that you made. There's the open house directional A-frame type things, and then there's ones that folks are putting a small, like whatever, campaign type sign in someone's lawn, yard, whatever, for more than a 4-hour period or a 1-day period. They would actually want to try to put it out there for a week or something like that.
Yeah,
that's a significant difference, I think. But if it's just an A-frame on the corner to alert an open house for an afternoon, an attempt to get permission, I think, is reasonable. And if they fail, they leave a business card so that the homeowner can call them, type of a thing. Tim.
Sorry, just
yeah. I want to echo what Kim said. I mean, I think maybe some more additional work needs to be done on this, because there is a difference between an A-frame and a stakes going in the ground, even though that is the public right-of-way. The homeowners are tasked with maintaining it and putting grass in or whatever they happen to be doing, with that parking strip or that strip of land. So, and I'm also concerned, and Josh, maybe you can answer this question. I think the language was make the best effort to contact the owner. I don't even understand how that's enforced. I mean, that just devolves into they'll just do whatever they want. And how do you enforce that, I guess, is the question.
Yeah. I think it's no, go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
That's a great question. That was one of the other concerns we had with the existing language was best efforts basically means any effort, and really we can't prove or disprove whether any effort was made if contact wasn't made. To the issue that both Councilor Rosner and Councilor Young have raised, as you're all aware, I'm sure, we can't distinguish based on the content of the signs. But you're absolutely right that, as I recall, the complaints that we receive are more often about the campaign signs in somebody's front yard rather than a realtor sign. But the struggle then is to develop a code that doesn't distinguish between those two, but captures the what is the behavior that we want to allow and not allow. So I think the suggestions about duration and sign type, A-frame versus stakes in the ground, are certainly options we could look at to further refine that part of the code.
Yeah.
So I think those things should be vetted out, clarified more, and we can continue this, I think, to another meeting, and we can decide when to get that dialed in. From my perspective, if staff could also just have some language at hand, between now and then have council consider the idea of just prohibiting the feather signs and letting folks utilize the banner signs in the zoning, business zoning instead. So something to chew on. It's less work for staff, another sign to manage, enforce, permit. And I think the banner type signs are more functional for businesses than that other thing. So just to chew on. Question for staff: what was the change from on the institutional public zoning on the freestanding sign? You changed the language to a 36 square foot sign. What was it before, or what is it now?
So that remains the same.
Okay.
Yeah. So we just really looked at the wall sign language.
Okay, great.
And could
any other?
Just a question on that. Could you? I didn't quite catch what you said on that. There seemed to be a limitation on those 36 square feet signs and how close they could be to major road. Did I miss that?
That's the wall sign size, I think.
So that's for the one freestanding sign that they are allowed in the institutional public zones. They're allowed one freestanding sign not to exceed 36 square feet. And that language stays the same. That's in our code now. It's proposed to remain the same.
And then what you're suggesting to change is the distance from the face of a public or an IP zoned structure, the further away from the road, the larger the square footage on the building.
Right.
All right. Thank you. I misunderstood.
Yep.
Any other thoughts or feedback on this topic?
I did.
Yes, Kim.
So, I mean, I know it's been 6 months, 5 months since we talked about this, but I really was, after I was rereading what we talked about from months ago, and we had put all that new language in there about getting the permits and one per property or 2 per property if there's 2 storefronts or whatnot, and they can only have it up for so many days, 30 days or 90 days, I don't even remember. That certainly seems a lot of staff power to manage that. So I'm not sure that I'm going to be in favor of all that hassle or work. So it's either, to me, it's like either no flag signs or flag signs, but without so much management from staff. So.
I have the same concern. Sorry, Keith, I had my hand up. I jumped the gun.
Yep.
I have the same concern about the creating a process that has to be managed and tracked by staff. That could, I can't imagine what that looks like right now, but I'm just guessing that there's some significant staff time involved. Also with our code enforcement officer to deal with that and go track how long has it been up and those types of issues. I also want to make sure whatever we do is consistent across all of our commercial/industrial zones, that we're not penalizing a business like Love Bites, from not having or having a sign just because they're in one particular zone or the other. Obviously, we don't want them in residential zones. That's not what I'm talking about there. All that said, my preference is those feather signs are just overused. They get torn up. They look horrible after a couple months. And I think that's a factor of the designs. And my input at this point is that we just not allow those signs.
So when should we continue this second reading meeting to? Is there a date that is of interest by council? February, March, we're both listed on the staff report presentation.
And Mayor, if I may briefly here, one other thing, since there's been a lot of discussion about different concepts and different alternatives, my suggestion would be we schedule a date to bring this back for the second reading again. But
Yeah.
maybe we have a work session in between now and then to hash out these details so we can have one code proposal to bring to council for voting up or down rather than various puzzle pieces trying to fit together.
Yeah.
There was also some discussion at the first reading about regulating, because we're distinguishing now between flags and flag signs or feather signs. And flags are now just treated as exempt from the code. And there was some discussion about should we limit the number of flags that somebody can have on a property and so forth. So that might be something we want to discuss in that work session as well.
I would concur with that. At least chat about it. So,
Agreed.
Joe, figure out a work session between now and a date certain. And I don't have my calendar in front of me. Julia, Erica, Joe, want to recommend a date?
So I'm going to start, and Julia and Erica can chime in. So the two meetings in January 5th and January 19th are fairly light at this point. The 19th might be a good target to do the work session.
Okay.
In January.
In January.
Yeah, gotcha.
I'm assuming that gives us time to put together some of the things we've heard tonight, Erica and Julia and Josh.
I think it does.
Yeah, I think so.
Then the second meeting in February or some point after that. Or
Bringing it back.
For a date certain extension.
Yeah, and if you want to pick the second meeting, I'm just looking at the calendar. The two dates in February 2nd and February 16th. So maybe the 16th, Mr. Mayor?
So the value of doing it in February or early March is just if we then, give whatever we decide, we give the business community the time before an implementation date so that depending upon assuming different scenarios. What's council's wish?
I'd suggest March.
First meeting in March?
It's March 2nd.
March 2nd sounds great. I don't want to talk about flag signs on my birthday, so March 2nd is great.
Translation, he won't be here. And it'll be good to have Doug in the conversation for the work session plus the meeting. Or Russell, I apologize. Doug, of course, too, but since Russell had to leave. So with that, is there a motion to continue the ordinance 2020-005? So the motion is to continue ordinance 2020-005 to the first meeting in March, which is March what?
Second
of 2021. Is there a second to Renee's motion?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. Item B, a public hearing, is first reading of ordinance 2020-008.
Good evening, Mayor Mays and
Hi, Eric.
councilors. Hey, happy to be with you this evening. It'll be another short presentation. Hopefully you can see my screen here and hear me okay. So I'll be giving a brief presentation on the Poly annexation, case file LU 2020-010AN. I know you've been seeing a lot of different properties tonight, so just give a quick reminder. The subject site is here on the southeast and the south side of Tonquin Road, and a small portion here on the southeast side of Tonquin Road. The applicant has requested another continuance. The reason is the same as the last two. Still working out the details on the access management plan and exactly where some of the access points and also the street right-of-way dedications will need to be. So in order to give more time to settle all of that discussion, the applicant has requested another continuance to a date certain of December 1st. This would be the first reading on December 1st with a second reading on December 15th. And that's it. I'll keep it brief. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions? And so I apologize, I got completely distracted. So this is not the first reading, or this is the second reading's in December?
So we
First
would
reading being postponed till December 1st.
Continuance, just like last.
Is there a motion to continue? Wait, we're going to close? No, we're not going to close because we want to continue. So any discussion before we consider a motion? Is there a motion to continue?
I'll make a motion that we can. Oh, go ahead.
I make a motion to continue.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on the motion to continue the first reading of Ordinance 2020-008 to the December whatever meeting?
December 1st.
December 1st. No discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes to continue to December 1st. I apologize, Eric, for my distraction. Thank you for that presentation, and we look forward to having maybe the first true hearing on December 1st.
I am too. Thank you, Mayor. Mayor.
I think it's going to become Ordinance 2021 dash something.
Good if we get there. Thank you.
Ordinance 20, item C, last public hearing on our agenda this evening is Ordinance 2020-010, adopting the 2019-2039 Sherwood Housing Needs Analysis as a sub-element of the comprehensive plan. Erica.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. So tonight you have a recommendation before you from the Sherwood Planning Commission to adopt the housing needs analysis. So the housing needs analysis, or H&A, is a technical policy document. It's a policy document that will help guide future discussions on residential development in Sherwood. So where should growth occur? What housing types are needed in the community? And what other programs or tools should the city review and consider to promote needed housing? These are the types of questions that this document will help us have conversations about. This document reviews the housing needs for the community within a 20-year planning period. However, this document is expected to be updated every 5 to 7 years. It's good to keep this document current, fairly current. So the H&A provides a housing needs projections, over a 20-year planning period. And we have 3 primary obligations under Goal 10. Which is the state land use goal for housing. So first, the city must show that land is designated in a way that provides the opportunity for 50% of the new housing to be single-family detached, and the other 50% of the housing stock to be a mix of single-family attached housing and multifamily units. Second, Sherwood, we need to provide the opportunity for development of all needed housing types. So that's, single family detached, single family attached, and multifamily units. And then third, Sherwood, we need to show how we are achieving an average of 6 dwelling units per net acre. And we do this through our residential zoning designations. And I know earlier tonight in your work session, we know that we are definitely meeting that 6 dwelling units per acre standard. So the H&A is broken down into 3 sections. So first, we look at historical and recent development trends. And then we look at the projected forecast of housing units for the 20-year planning period. And then we need to make sure that we're providing that opportunity for that mix of housing. Last is the residential lands capacity analysis, and it really answers the questions, do we have enough land to accommodate future residential housing needs here in our community. So basically, this is a factual document to help support planning efforts related to housing and concept planning. So Sherwood residential housing trends. I'm just going to go over a couple of facts and figures here. A lot of this information is in the plan document and the appendix. But single-family housing accounts for about 75% of Sherwood's housing stock. Single-family attached accounts for 7%, and multifamily accounts for roughly 18%. Nearly 3/4 of Sherwood residents own their own homes. However, over the past couple of years, there's been a slight decline in home ownership. Renter occupied is a mixture of multifamily at 57%, single family detached is 35%, and single family attached is 9%. So Sherwood's residential development, so if we look at the years between 2000 and 2014, we are averaging about 8.2 dwelling units per net acre, which means we are achieving that 6 units per net acre per goal 10. So some other characteristics of our population here in Sherwood when it comes to housing. Our population is growing, relatively fast. We have an aging population here in Sherwood. We are attracting younger people and more households with children. Our household size is larger than the state average. Our population is becoming, more diverse. And most people working in Sherwood actually do not live in the community. And all this information can just be found on pages 18 through 20 in the H&A document, as well as in the appendix. So there are a lot of demographic and socioeconomic variables that affect housing choice. Through housing market research, we find that age, size, and household income are the most strongly correlated with housing choice. So this little graphic here, it really depicts the stages of life, for families as we make our transitions into, different housing types throughout our life. People, younger people and older people are most likely to live in single-person households and may choose to live in, attached or multifamily units. People in their middle years who have children, might prefer larger detached family homes. And then as you get older and move into your senior years, you might choose again to live in attached housing or in a multifamily unit, such as the Springs or the Ackerley that have been built recently. So looking at our local and regional trends and housing costs. So let me go back. Our incomes here in Sherwood are higher than the state average. Home prices continue to increase. And then more than 1/3 of Sherwood's households have a housing affordability problem. And this means that a household, pays more than 30% of their gross income on housing costs, which includes, their mortgage, their utilities, and insurance. But this number is very similar to the regional averages. When considering transportation costs, the average household in Sherwood spends about 54% of its income on housing and transportation. It's a little bit higher than the surrounding communities of, Wilsonville and Tigard. But then again, Sherwood, we're on the edge of the region, so those transportation costs are going to be a little bit higher for folks. So projected housing growth in Sherwood. So the H&A, we are required to use the Metro forecast for the 20-year planning period. And as you can see here, we are expected to grow by 1,729 households in that planning period. 700 which are expected to be or accommodated for inside city limits, and a little over 1,000 are projected in the Brookman area. So this is the forecast of needed housing units by mix. And the forecast shows, 50% of our housing can be single family detached, and we're accommodating the other 50%. We have allocated 25% for single family attached, and then another 25% for multifamily. And I just want to let you know, when Planning Commission first reviewed this table, we had some different numbers in the single family attached and in the multifamily percentage. And, we went back historically to look at, what is Sherwood currently building more of? Are we building more of single family attached or more multifamily? And really over the past 10 years, we've seen more single family attached housing being built here in Sherwood. So we increased, so that's why those numbers are 25%. So what are the implications of these trends? So we know growth in housing will be driven by growth in population. That's just a given. On average, our housing stock will look a lot like, our past housing here in Sherwood. But if the future differs from the past, we're likely to move in a direction of smaller units and more diverse housing choices in the community. But I do want to emphasize that, we can do all this analysis, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future. Trends change, the world changes, obviously. I don't think anybody really expected a global pandemic, to happen. So we know that there's a growth in older households, and this will result in more households that are, smaller in nature, and there could be additional demand for ownership and rental opportunities for those types. We are seeing a growth in millennial households with families. They're demanding, more affordable units for home ownership and also rental opportunities. We're seeing this, demand for comparatively affordable units when it comes to millennials, because, just the average wage of workers, hasn't really gone up over the past couple of years. And then the forecast definitely shows, again, a more diverse range of housing types are needed in Sherwood. And really what we're talking about here, I'm just going to run through these really quick. We're looking at cottage clusters, duplexes, townhomes, courtyard housing, small multiplexes, mixed-use family housing, and then small lot and single-family detached units. So the third and last step to the H&A is our buildable lands analysis and looking at our housing capacity. So the buildable lands inventory, it identified 175 net acres of vacant and partially vacant land within Sherwood city limits, and 79 acres in the Brookman area. This table, I know this table's a lot. But really what this table shows us, so this table, we look at the residential land capacity based on our maximum densities in our zoning code and our minimum lot sizes. And it shows that Sherwood's amount of buildable land for residential development has the capacity to accommodate 1,510 1,510 new dwelling units under these assumptions. And this estimate results in an overall average density of 8.6 dwelling units per acre. And we know from this table about 44% of Sherwood's residential capacity is in the Brookman area and other areas within the urban growth boundary. This table also looks at the historical development and how we've developed, recently over the past couple of years. And based on the historical development densities and assumptions, we have the capacity to accommodate 1,286 new dwelling units. And this estimate is an overall average density of 7.3 units per acre. So this is really telling us that right now, when we develop here in Sherwood, that we are actually developing at higher densities than the minimum allowable density and each one of our residential zoning designations. And we're also meeting the 6 dwelling units per net acre, 6 dwelling units per acre that's in the metropolitan housing rule.
So not tied to this thing, but if we are higher density than we have to be, we can go lower density when we
So it just means that
do other stuff.
Well,
I'm joking. I know this isn't possible, but it's just a little snarky commentary.
Okay. So our last table here. So this is our last step in our housing needs analysis, and it's really to compare capacity of residential units by zone with the demand of housing by zone based on our historical development densities. And so this table, it's identifying that we have a deficit, I can't say that word this evening, of residential capacity in each zone. And we have a total deficit of about 608 dwelling units for the 20-year planning period. And the largest deficits are in the medium density residential, medium density residential high, and high density residential. So what does this tell us? So it means that in order to comply with Goal 10, the city will need to change its policies to allow for more development on the inventory of vacant land that we have, or request a UGB expansion from Metro, or maybe do some combination of both. The H&A doesn't tell us when we should do this, or how you want to take action. It just kind of spells it out. It's just a fact. So we are meeting our state requirements to provide the opportunity for 50% of new housing to be single family and attached or multifamily. We are meeting our density requirements for the metropolitan housing rule. Sherwood, we should continue to plan for all housing types, for all income levels. And then we have a deficit of housing, as was just stated in the earlier slide, or shown in the earlier slide. We know that that existing neighborhoods built since 1990 are really unlikely to redevelop or see significant infill during the next 20 years. And then we have a limited supply of moderate and high density housing. So really this document is used to help guide, our community conversations around housing, and we have it. It supports our housing goals and policies in our comprehensive plan. And with that, staff is recommending City Council hold the first reading on this ordinance, adopting the Sherwood housing needs analysis as a sub-element to the comprehensive plan. And I can take any questions.
Mayor Mays, you're on mute.
little things. I pulled a Joe. I pulled a JoJo, excuse me. Any questions for staff? This is the first of 2 readings. This will come back in the December 1st meeting. Is my understanding right?
Correct.
I see. Oh, Tim got his hand up.
And as I understand it, if we do not pass this prior to the end of the year, I think it is, we would have to start over from scratch. Is that correct?
So if we don't adopt it by the end of this year, we would have to go back and look at the projected forecast from Metro for our 20-year planning period. So we would have to look at the planning at the 2021 to 2041 planning period, that timeline, which, based on that forecast, we could see, more housing need, more
work is required.
Yeah.
And I don't want to. I think we need to get this done because we put a lot of work and energy into this, a lot of staff time, and let's get it behind us.
Yeah, and new state law, we have to do it again in 6 years, anyways.
That's right.
But everybody does. Doug.
Yeah, I would just kind of echo that. Also, maybe Julia or Erica can touch on. I know the Planning Commission, when they forwarded this along, had some thoughts or commentary that they wanted us to know about. So maybe one of you can repeat that a little bit for the council's benefit. But yeah, I'd echo that. Like, we have to do this. It's a rubber stamping exercise. So let's get it done and move forward.
Yeah, so when Planning Commission, when they reviewed this document, they did have, some minor changes. When it's reviewed the next go around, we added 2 additional bullet points in the executive summary, one relating to COVID-19 and the implications it might have on housing, and another bullet in regards to House Bill 2001 and any implications that House Bill, may have on this analysis in the future.
Yeah. What a mess for anyone who, my 10-cent comment. Any other comments or questions of staff for our first reading?
Planning Commission had 2 notes, one on the executive summary and one on page 25 that calls out the 30% HUD cost metric for cost burden households. But no, can you explain what that concern was or what they were asking there?
Yeah, so the metric, the 30% metric that is used in the housing needs analysis for that affordability issue comes from HUD. And that wasn't made clear in that section on page 25. So we called it out in a footnote.
So they just wanted more
detail. They wanted,
HUD related. Okay.
Right. Where did that metric come from? It didn't say where it came from.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can speak a little bit on the kind of the conclusions part, or the because this actually originated back when I was still on Planning Commission, believe it or not. I think the commission had, in general at that time, and again, I think still now, a lot of the commission members have concerns about the lead-in section of this document, which I think is titled recommendations or recommended options. The document itself is supposed to serve as essentially data to back up, future housing decisions. And I think the commission felt like that section of the document really went too far into subjective, what could be subjective recommendations, where we're really not talking about data anymore. Now we're saying, hey, you should do this, which may or may not be fully supported by the data. So I think that was where their reservations there lie.
And we took out a lot of that verbiage.
Yeah, I got the impression that the commission still didn't love the final result, but it's definitely improved over previous versions.
Other comments or questions? With that, we will close the first reading, the public hearing for ordinance 2020-010, and we'll be back for a second reading on December 1st. Next on the agenda is city manager reports.
Mayor and council, I have 2 or 3 items to share, updates on a variety of things. So first, I wanted to do a quick update on a project that has been around for many years, the Cedar Creek Trail, near and dear to Mayor Mays, who I think started this early in his tenure as mayor. So it is actually this Friday is the deadline for bid documents to be submitted to ODOT. You may recall ODOT is managing this project. And then the bid opening will be in January. And right now, everything looks very good to construct this long overdue and long awaited project this summer, and it to be concluded by the end of the summer. So I wanted to share that news with folks tonight. A couple other things. We, as everyone knows, the governor ordered a freeze for the next 2 weeks. What that means for city operations, you may have seen some posts. We are closing city facilities to the public, as is outlined in the governor's plan to close offices. Staff will still be working in city facilities. We're just going to limit access to the public like we did back in March and April. And hopefully it will only be for 2 weeks, but time will tell where cases go and whether this will be extended or not. The other bit of news, I think the biggest industry that is affected, restaurants, eating and drinking establishments, once again, are really affected by this 2-week freeze. They're back to just doing takeout. The governor announced today, late this afternoon, $55 million in funding that will be distributed to counties, and then counties will distribute to cities, I assume. So we're going to be working with Washington County to find out how we can get some of those funds to some of our local businesses who are affected by the freeze. So more to come on that.
The announcement I saw was a minimum of $500,000 per county, and then the balance per population.
Correct. I have a monthly meeting with Washington County managers, and this is probably one of the topics we'll talk about tomorrow. I don't know how much notice the counties actually got from the governor's office, so we'll find out more information. And I don't know if folks will have to apply to the county for funds or whether we'll get a chunk of money and then they'll apply through us. But we'll work through those details as always, try to get resources. You may also recall we requested some additional funding for some of our businesses. We're still waiting from the county on that request. Bruce Coleman, our economic development director, reached out once again to the county to find out what the status of those funds are. We requested money for restaurants and bars to help do outdoor dining, winterize their facilities with some of the costs associated with that. And then there's some specific types of businesses in town, largely indoor entertainment complexes that have been shut down that we were trying to get some additional funding for. That includes the ice arena, the bowling alley at Langer's Entertainment, and then also Regal Cinema, which has been shut down as well. So we're still waiting and hoping that we will get some money for those specific businesses in town relatively soon. That's all I had for tonight, unless you have questions for me. Most of my senior leadership is still on the call if you have other questions as well.
I had a thought, just to throw it out there to you and to council. I talked to Joe about this earlier. This was before the governor made her announcement today, but whether or not there was anything more as a city we could do to help our businesses, the ones that are impacted for this freeze. I know we originally put out that $200,000 and we got that back through the CARES Act. So I didn't know if council had any appetite for reusing that or waiting to see what we can get through the county. But anyways, just throwing that out there.
I thought we already did reuse it in the round. Didn't we do a second round where we just rolled it back in?
No, we got
No.
CARES money from the county for those other grants.
Yep. So we made the decision, you may recall, Councilor Scott, before CARES even existed early on, that we dipped into our fund balance, not knowing that we would get reimbursed by the federal government, and we did. So
Yeah. I remember we talked about when we were getting reimbursed. I remember we talked about just reinvesting it back into. So I thought we had, but apparently we only talked about it.
So I guess that's my question or my thought, is something to think about doing.
And did we get, Joe, did we get reimbursed for all of the expenses that we submitted? That we did for COVID?
No.
And
There's still a significant remaining balance of COVID eligible expenses that we have not been reimbursed for.
So, other questions of Joe and his team? Thank Chief for the explanation of the odd Clackamas deputy event over the weekend or whatever.
Rosner, did you have your hand up? I see it on my screen.
Oh, it is up, isn't it? Inadvertent hand raise once again.
All right. Seeing none. Thanks, Joe. Council announcements. Who'd like to announce something? Well, raise your hand, and we'll do that. Old Doug, go for it. Go Ducks, by the way.
Go Ducks. I'll go first. So briefly, as you all recall, our work session last week got ended early, preempted by Planning Commission. So we did have a Planning Commission meeting last Tuesday. There was 2 public hearings at the meeting, and the first was a PUD application planned unit development for Denali Summit, and that has been forwarded on to council with a recommendation to approve. So we will be seeing that very soon, I'm sure. That's a 41 lot residential subdivision in the very low density area off of Murdoch. And then the second item was really the Brookman addition kind of concept plan. I'd call it really just a road adjustment. We didn't really look at the concept plan as a whole. I think there was some misunderstanding maybe at Planning Commission and along with myself around what we actually were doing and not doing. So it was really just realigning Rickman Road as part of that concept plan. So again, that has also been, I believe, recommended to us for approval. So I think we'll be seeing that again very soon at City Council. And I just want to give a shout out to everyone on Planning Commission as well as staff. Their penance for pushing us outside last week was they were on the meeting until 11:30. So it was a long one. It was a long night. We all burned the midnight oil together. So thank you all. Thanks to them all and staff as well for the long night.
Wow.
Yeah, 4-hour meeting. Why not? Ugh.
And Mayor, both of those items that Councilor Scott mentioned will be on your December agendas. So.
Good. Raise your hand. Who'd like to be next? Tim raised his hand.
Just super quick. I have a school board meeting tomorrow night, so I'll have more on that in our next meeting. I sat in on the Monday Q&A that Metro put on for the tipping fees that we talked about earlier in the work session, the proposed rate increases that would ultimately affect garbage rates. That was an interesting Q&A. They provide a lot of good information, and as everyone here knows, we will be having a meeting with Metro work session on the 24th, correct, Joe?
Yes, 6 p.m.
To go over that in detail with them, and What we didn't talk about beyond tipping fees, we're also going to be discussing with Metro their proposed new transfer station, Taj Mahal, that they want to build over in Cornelius, that could also impact our garbage rates here in Sherwood, believe it or not. So we'll be having those conversations with Metro. And I think that's all I have for now. I'll keep it short. We've been here a long time tonight.
Thanks, Tim. Kim?
Yeah, I don't have much either. You know, the YMCA is one of my liaison assignments, and I think they're just trucking along. Looks like they had a successful Halloween event. I'm sure their classes are closing down as of tomorrow. So, and then CDBG Community Development Block Grant. Our next meeting happens to be on the same night that we just scheduled the budget meeting, which always seems to be the case. So I'll be picking and choosing which I go to, because that'll be an important meeting for CDBG. So I wish we could schedule those budget meetings on Wednesdays, because there's so many meetings that happen on Thursdays. But that's about it. Police Advisory Board is this Thursday, so I'll have more on that next meeting.
Kim, and Joe, did we submit an application for anything with Community Development Block Grant this go around?
No, not this go around.
Okay.
And Councilor Young, I can revisit the Wednesday option.
Well, not for this coming meeting, but we can talk offline.
Okay.
Great. Sean?
Yeah, I'll just keep it brief. Cultural Arts Commission met last night. They're still doing some good work. They're got a murals plan that they're working on that they're going to tighten up and just send to us for just informational purposes. Have us take a look at that, see if we have any input on that. I think probably since our last council meeting, I've met with the Regional Water Providers Consortium Board. Nailed that one first try. And also the Willamette Intake Facility Group. So our water, regional water groups are still working hard for us, keeping our water healthy and clean, and getting us set for preparedness. So I always recommend you to go out and look at the Regional Water Providers Consortium Board website. They've got a lot of good information on emergency preparedness and how much water to have in your home and all that. And then I'll just end, talking about what we're seeing tomorrow with the 2-week pause. I just hope everybody takes this seriously over the next 2 weeks. We've got a lot of our small businesses, as Joe mentioned, particularly some of our restaurants and our entertainment facilities are going to be very significantly impacted over the next 2 weeks. So as they are basically being asked to sacrifice for us, for the community over the next few weeks, I ask that we also do the same for them, and that we adhere to all of the guidelines, stay home as much as possible, wear a mask if you can, order some takeout food for these restaurants. They're doing a great job modifying their menus to be more takeout friendly. So give them a ring, order a breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And this one's a bit of a big ask as well, as I know that Thanksgiving is coming up shortly as well. And many of us certainly appreciate friends and family gatherings, but where possible, if you can, it'd be great to keep that tightened up to a small group if you can. I'd hate to get out of this 2-week freeze to only see another spike coming from increased gatherings on Thanksgiving. So, if we want to get through this, we're going to have to change our actions. We're going to have to sacrifice a little bit and tighten up. So I just ask everybody to do the right thing, be safe, and wear a mask. That's it.
Here, well said. Thank you, Sean. Renee?
Yeah. Let me look here. Tomorrow, the Library Advisory Board meets. We finally have a full board, as you heard tonight. We had several new members join, so it'll be nice to have a full board again. The Housing Advisory Committee for Washington County, we will meet on Thursday to get updates there. The Senior Advisory Board should be meeting in the next month. But they're still continuing to serve the seniors in some really interesting ways. They had a coping with COVID seminar series. One was about scams and one was about mental health. So they continue to do great things there. There was a survey that was sent out for services for the seniors over the age of 55. I participated in the HBA, the acronym. I can't think of what it stands for anymore.
Home Building Association.
Yes, thank you. The analysis on housing and how it's going. It's actually going well. Numbers are up. I also participated in the Metro session yesterday. That was really quite fascinating to hear their take on things. And Sherwood definitely had the most input of everybody there. And then just to kind of echo what Sean said of supporting our local business during this time, a few weeks ago, both Fat Milo's and Symposium, they were able to help Good Neighbor Center out while we were experiencing a COVID case. And I want to shout out this time to Shannon at Trees. We've just opened our severe weather shelter season, and Good Neighbor Center is the fiscal agent. We ran into a situation Sunday, Monday, and tonight where we didn't have meal hosts, and Shannon opened up Trees and provided the meals for us. So we are very blessed by a community of wonderful businesses, and I just want to thank them. That's all I have.
Awesome. Thanks, Renee. I think, yeah, because Russell had to leave. A couple things. Monday, it was like Government Day. Had our Washington County Coordinating Committee meeting. Generally uneventful, other than a need to fill Washington County City's representative on JPACT. I expect the mayors of Washington County will support Hillsborough Mayor Steve Calloway into that role starting January. And needed a West County representative for Region 1 ODOT. We already have 2 East County representatives, and the consensus was to support Forest Grove Mayor Pete Truax to do that job, which was going to be the mayor of North Plains, but she was unable to change the meeting date of her city council meetings, to my surprise. And because, full disclosure, being on that Region 1 advisory committee is a big deal. So I think that was short-sighted on their behalf, but I'm confident that Mayor Truax will represent the needs of all the cities on that side of the county, including North Plains. Then followed that with a meeting of the Washington County mayors with Chair Harrington. It was fairly uneventful, but good to see folks. Chatted up. One point of note was just reiterating what Sean and Renee commented on, this 2-week pause. There's a reason, and I don't look at positive tests rates. That's not the things I look at. I look at hospitalizations, and they're way up. And we don't want them to be overwhelmed, because then the good treatment, the protocols that people have to help folks get through COVID, if it gets overwhelmed, then we have problems. And Mayor Snyder of Tigard literally left that meeting early because his job is one of caters to hospitals, and he had to help them coordinate canceling 70 elective surgeries at one of our 3 hospitals in our county, so to create space. Last week, Tim and I met with our Metro Counselor-elect, which was a good.
What about that? Yes.
Which was a good conversation. Covered a lot of great points. I thought it was very productive, and he definitely expressed commitment to engage all of us on a more frequent basis and listen to us in a good way. So that was, as I think Tim would concur, that it was a very good meeting. Cold. It was Monday, the day that it was frozen in the morning, and it was still frozen at 10 o'clock, or whenever it was, we got together outside of Symposium. And of course, they got there first, so they got to sit by the heater.
Joe, can the city buy Keith a jacket? Because someone showed up without a jacket. But no, that meeting was great, Keith. So thanks for bringing that up. We're trying to get in early and build a relationship with him. And if everyone's okay with it, I think we should invite him to the work session on the 24th, where we talk about rates and tipping fees.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I'm sure I'm missing a couple other things, but that's enough. We've been going on long enough. It's a minute to 9 o'clock. And Joe just texted me that he wants to have a special emergency work session to go for another hour. I'm kidding. Anything else for the good of the collective before we adjourn and enjoy what's left of this meeting this evening after 3.5 hours, whatever it was we've had? Joe, what have you not said that you need to say?
Go Ducks.
Adjourned.
Wait. Go Beavs. Now you can adjourn.
Yeah. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.